sometimes the pre-construction stage can take just as long as the construction period, depending on how fast the client wants to move. The first part of the pre-construction stage is what we call due diligence and schematic phase. And during this period, we're determining what is the feasibility of the project. We like to use the term, we don't budget to a design, meaning we don't want the client to come up with this big grandiose design and not be able to afford it. So very early on in the due diligence schematic stages, we need to know what the target budget is for the client. We don't like to budget to a design, we like to design to a budget. Very important because the traditional way of doing things is the opposite. You'll have a team draw up something that no one can afford and you end up having to lose time and value engineer. So it's very important before we start the due diligence schematic phases, what's the overall budget? Does it have to be with just real locked in? It can be, but just some idea of what the client's expectations are really, really important. But during this stage, we're putting together some preliminary floor plans, some preliminary elevations, so that this vision that they had in the vision collection stage can start come to life and we can make adjustments to what the building may look like. When you're doing a ground up project, we're doing some geotechnical testing of the soils and how much rock they have and are there environmental issues. We'll have some of those conversations as well and do some of those due diligence tests on the project site. We'll also begin to have some preliminary application meetings with the local municipalities, whether it's the city engineering department, planning, zoning perhaps. So we'll broach those subjects as well during the due diligence stage. We'd much rather our client spend a few dollars during the pre-construction phase in the schematic due diligence area and we can stop at the end of each stage. So we'd rather them spend a little money here before they commit to a very large quantity of dollars to complete the whole pre-construction phase. So it's almost that insurance before they move on and start spending some big bucks there on the pre-construction design part. So it's a very important. Most of the hard work is done during this due diligence and feasibility because you're somewhat locking in your floor plan and you have a really good feel for what the building's going to look like. The second phase we call design development. And there are a lot of interpretations of what design development means and doesn't mean, but usually we take the plans to a 50% to 75% completion time. And it's really, after we do the due diligence phase, we're really building on those floor plans, we're really building on those elevations and drawing those things to a deeper level. One of the most important parts about the due diligence phase is getting the civil engineering done. One of the hardest things that we do today is getting the Planning Commission to approve a project. So the civil engineer is critical to this design development stage because at the end of what we call the DD stage, we want to have Planning Commission approval on the client's behalf. So the civil engineering will basically be done at this point in time. One of the hardest things to estimate, or guesstimate if you will, early on is how much the site and utilities and grading are going to cost. So what we call Division 2 in construction is everything that's outside the building envelope. And it's really hard to guess at those things. We can throw allowances at that, but when we take out the X factor and take out the unknown of how much these utilities and site infrastructure are going to cost, we can get a real good feel for how much and how it's going to affect the budget. So we like to get the civil engineering done, and we go ahead and have those conversations that we need to have with a mechanical, plumbing, and electrical design team. So we want to start developing the systems of the building as well, not just the floor plan and the elevations. Phase 3, construction drawings, is we're wrapping everything up. And to this point, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, we like to do a budget checkpoint at each point in the project. So at the phase 1 due diligence stage, we want to do a schematic budget. At the design development stage, we want to do a DD budget. And finally, when we're finishing up the drawings, getting them ready for construction documents, that's what we mean by CD, we're going to submit them for permit, we're going to finish the drawings, submit them for permit, and we're going to send them out for a final budget. And so we're wrapping everything up and getting them ready for construction, for the guys in the field, our team members, our subcontractors and vendors to actually start doing the work.